I'm Lisa, a registered nurse here with Precision Advanced Specialty Healthcare. Today I'm going to demonstrate for you how to perform TPN or Total Parenteral Nutrition at home. We will see you in the hospital and demonstrate for you the process for your infusion. We like to try to see you at least a couple of times before you're discharged home. We want you to have this video to give you additional information so you'll be successful with your home infusion process. The first thing that we will give to you is our TPN manual. The manual has multiple areas in it. Some of this is general information that you will use at home. There's an area for contact information. You can put all of your emergency contacts here, your physicians, the hospital, the pharmacy, and then there's a listing for your doctors and other healthcare providers, so you have all that information in one place. There is a section that goes through bathing at home, signs and symptoms of problems that you might have that you would want to notify your home health nurse about. There's information in the very back of the booklet about potential complications that could occur, signs and symptoms of those, what to watch for, good general information so that you will have everything you need to be successful with your infusion at home. The main section that we're going to talk about today is the section that goes over the actual infusion process. There is a one-page teaching sheet that goes through the infusion process word for word. And then there's also teaching sheets that go through the process word for word with pictures. So you could actually read the information that we have in the booklet here, and it would walk you through how to do the TPN infusion in the home without any other assistance. You could do it just by reading our booklet here. So we're going to go through on this video exactly what this book is going to teach you at home. The first thing we want to talk about is what supplies do we need to do our home infusion for TPN. You'll need your TPN bag. Our pharmacy will deliver you a box of supplies. We usually try to deliver you a week's worth of supplies at a time. The TPN you will keep in the refrigerator until you use it. Your doctor will determine whether or not your TPN will be continuous or cycled. By cycling, I mean that it will infuse over a specific number of hours nightly. Usually it's 12 hours, so it's 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. We will make sure before you leave the hospital you know what is exactly prescribed for you, and you'll have all the information you need. So your TPN bag will look like this. Mine is clear because I use this for teaching. Yours will likely be a milky color because it'll have some fat in it. But again, you will keep it in the refrigerator until you get ready to use it. If you're going to be cycling at night, the TPN will need to be taken out of the refrigerator about 3 hours before you start it so that it has time to come to room temperature. So if you're going to start it at 9 o'clock at night, by 6 o'clock you want to set that bag out on the counter so that it has time to come to room temperature. The other things that we will need to add to the bag are our multivitamins. The multivitamins are 2 different vials. There's a vial 1, which has a white cap on it, and vial 2, which has a purple or blue cap on it. You need 1 of each of these vials of multivitamins for your TPN solution. These are maintained in the refrigerator also. So when you set your bag out to come to room temperature, you want to set your multivitamins out as well. When we deliver these to you, they will be bagged together, and so that way you will know that you need 1 of each of these for each TPN infusion. Sometimes there are going to be other additives that you have to put in your TPN. There could be insulin, there could be vitamin C. Again, we will let you know anything that you need to be adding to your TPN other than the multivitamins. For the multivitamins, to add those, we need a 10 cc syringe, and we need a needle for the syringe. If we were going to be adding insulin, we would need an insulin syringe and a needle for the insulin syringe. The other things that we need for our TPN, we need some alcohol pads. We need our actual pump. We're going to be using the CADD Solaris VIP pump, and so this teaching demonstration is going to be specific to this pump. This pump runs on AA batteries, so we need 4 AA batteries. We will need one of the CADD high volume administration sets. So this is the tubing that you will use to infuse your TPN. And we have a key that we use for our CADD pump, or we can also, the key is what we use to lock it if we have to lock the pump. So we've got that for our infusion as well. So I have everything here and ready to go. Let's talk a little bit about our TPN bag before we begin adding anything to it. Okay, let's look at an empty TPN bag. And the main reason I'm going to show you this is because I want you to know that there are 3 ports on the end of the bag. You have a port here that will have a silver piece of paper over it. This is the port that we add medication to our TPN through. You're going to know it's the additive port by the fact that this silver paper is over it. The center port is what our pharmacy uses to actually fill your TPN bag. It will have a clamp over it, and so you will not have to use this for anything. The third port is going to have a clear tab on it, and this third port is what we actually put our administration set into. It's what we spike to actually attach the administration set that will allow the TPN to infuse through this tubing. So when you get a new bag, yours will have a tab covering this third port. Now we're going to look at my teaching bag here. My teaching bag already has a administration set attached to it, and then it has our middle port, which we don't use, and then our third port here, which is the port that we use to add our supplies or our medications to our TPN. This third port is what we're going to use right now. So the first thing we're going to do is clean the port. And before you begin dealing with your TPN supplies or touching your IV site, you're always going to make sure that you have washed your hands really good with soap and water and that you put your gloves on. We supply you with the gloves, so you will have those with your supplies. So we're going to get our alcohol, and we want to clean the end of this additive port. Just clean all around that port, 5 to 10 seconds. Clean it really good. I'm going to make sure that it is clean and that it has time for it to dry before we add anything to the port. I like to take that alcohol pad and put the port on top of it, and that way it protects it for you to be able to add your additives to your TPN. You will always add the multivitamins. Remember, I said you're going to add a vial 1 and a vial 2. There will be a white vial and a blue vial. These tops on top of the vials just pop off, and then we'll want to take another alcohol pad and clean the top of the vials. So just clean the top of the vials and then let those dry. While we're letting those dry, we're going to get our 10 cc syringe. This is sterile, and we will just pop it out of the paper. Make sure not to touch the tip. Then we're going to take our needle, pop it out of the paper. We don't want to touch the end of the needle either. We're going to attach the syringe to the needle just by pushing the end of the syringe into the bottom of the needle and turning it to the right. Everything is lefty-loosey, righty-tighty, so you'll just turn it to make sure that it's attached. Now we need to draw up our multivitamins to add them to our TPN solution. So we're going to take the top off of our syringe, take your needle and push it into the top of one of the multivitamin bottles, then turn the bottle upside down. You're going to want to pull the bottle up and pull the needle down at the same time you're pulling on this plunger. So we want to pull all of the fluid from the vial into the plunger. And we have to pull the needle down as we do that so that we make sure that we get everything that is in the vial. So you want to pull the needle all the way down and then pull it out as you get everything out of the vial. Each vial has 5 cc's in it. So when I finish that, I'm going to push the air out of my syringe. I should have 5 cc's in my syringe. Then I'm going to take my needle and push it down into the second vial, Turn that one upside down, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to pull all the multivitamins down into my syringe. When I finish doing both vials, I should have a full 10 cc's of multivitamins. Mine is clear, of course, because this is not the actual multivitamins. Yours is going to be a bright yellow color. So I'm going to push the air out of the top of the syringe, and now I need to add these multivitamins to my TPN bag. I'm going to hold on to the additive port, and if you look at the end of this, the end of the port there in the center is a dot. That is what we are looking to add the multivitamins into. So I want to hold this straight so that my needle doesn't puncture anything, and I want to push my needle into that hole of the additive port, making sure I go straight and that I don't go up or down because it could puncture my port. So once I have that in, I'm going to push all those multivitamins into my TPN bag. I'll pull this out, and I can take this needle, put it into my top, and then I can put this into our sharps disposal box that we will send you in your supplies. Once I've added those TPN vitamins to my bag, then I want to mix it. So I'm going to rock my bag back and forth until I see all of that yellow color get mixed in with my TPN solution. Now that we have this all mixed, the next thing we want to do is to put our tubing onto our TPN bag and to prime the tubing. All right, so we have our tubing. Again, this is CADD High Volume Administration Set. We're going to open this tubing up. Take our tubing out. There's some paper tape that's just holding it together. Just take that off. Untangle the tubing. We have two ends to our tubing. We have the end that has the spike. This is the part that is going to go into our TPN solution. This spike is covered by a cap. This spike is sterile. So we want to make sure that this cap remains on the spike until we're ready to put the spike into our TPN bag. This part is the cartridge part of the tubing. This actually attaches to our pump, and it's what allows the pump to perform the infusion. There's a blue tab on this cartridge, and we want to keep that blue tab on there until we get the tubing completely primed. Further down on our tubing, we have a filter. When we are priming the tubing, we want to make sure this filter is upright so that it primes correctly. There is a clamp on the tubing, and we like to clamp this clamp before we begin the priming so that we don't get any extra air in our tubing. And then we have the end of our tubing here. So the first thing we're going to do is attach our tubing to our bag. This bag I use for teaching, so of course when I remove this spike, the end of my bag is already open. For every new TPN bag, this port is going to have a plastic tab on it. You will pull the tab off to open up this port. Even though you pull the tab off, the contents of the bag will still not come out because you haven't actually spiked the port yet. So to spike this port, you're going to take the end of your tubing, remove the cap, again making sure we don't touch the port, the end of the spike at all. And we want to put this spike into this part of our IV, of our TPN bag, And in order to get it to go forward, you're going to need to turn it and twist it with a little bit of strength until it goes all the way in. Because your bag will be new, it will take a little more power to push this spike all the way into the port on the bag. You want to do just like we did with a needle. You want to make sure that you go straight in, because if you go at an angle, the sharp part of your spike could puncture the side of this port. So we want to make sure we don't puncture it. So once we have that completely inside, the spike is completely into that port, then we're going to take our TPN bag. We will send you an ivy pole just like this one. Hang your TPN bag on there, and then now we are ready to prime our tubing. We want to make sure that the liquid in our TPN goes all the way down to the bottom of our tubing. We have our clamp on, and I've got a trash bag here, so I'm going to hold the end of my tubing over the trash bag, and I'm going to make sure that this part, the filter part of my tubing, is straight. You want to make sure that it is straight up and down so that when the TPN solution goes through it, it will prime correctly. So what I'm going to do is unclamp the end, and if we notice, we see that the solution begins to go through our bag. We want to make sure that it's going to go all the way down to the end of our tubing. Once it goes forward, when it gets down to the bottom of our tubing, we're going to watch for it to come out the end. It may take a few minutes for it to completely get to the end. As we see it going forward, you can see that there's little pockets of air right here. We want to make sure that those pockets of air are completely filled. So once we see the TPN solution come out the bottom, we're going to let it drip until there's no air in our tubing. So once it's completely primed, we see it coming out the bottom. I'm going to clamp the end of my clamp on my tubing, put this top back on here to protect this so it doesn't get contaminated. If we look at our tubing, there's no air pockets in our tubing. If we saw any pockets of air, we would again let more liquid go through the tubing until it gets the pockets of air completely out. You also might notice some little tiny, and actually if you look at right here, there's some little tiny bubbles right here. Those are what we call champagne bubbles. Those bubbles cannot hurt you, so you don't have to worry about trying to prime those out of your tubing. So now that we have our tubing completely primed, we are ready to attach our tubing to our pump. So now we're going to go through how to get our pump ready. Okay, now we're going to look at how we use the pump that's going to infuse our TPN solution. This is the CADD Solaris VIP pump. This pump runs on 4 AA batteries. So the first thing I'm going to show you how to do is put these batteries in. The top of the pump, there is a gray button. You're just going to turn it and the top opens up. You have plus and minus signs here on the top and on the inside that show you the direction in which your batteries need to go. Just follow those directives. Put all 4 batteries in. These batteries should last you 24 to 48 hours. I would change them every other night. Close out your pump, or close the top down, and then turn that gray button to lock it into place. To turn our pump on the side here, there's a gray button with a little minus sign on it. Just hold it in for a second, and the pump will go through its startup. Once the pump is on, you notice that it says ready to begin. Let's look at a few settings on our pump. First, we have the volume of fluid that is going to be infused for your TPN solution. This will be different for each individual. Right now we are in stopped mode, so this area says it's stopped, and you notice it's red. Right up here is our battery. The battery is fully green, so that tells us that our batteries are fully charged. Anytime the pump goes to sleep like that, just press a button and it'll come back on for you. So the first thing that we need to do to get our infusion ready to be started is attach our tubing to our pump. If we look at the tubing, here is the cartridge that will attach to your pump. This blue tab you can now take off. Just pull it and it comes right off. On the end of our cartridge there are two little feet that are plastic, and then on the bottom of our pump there are two little metal feet. These will attach underneath those metal feet. So we're going to open up our silver lever here, pull that down, take your plastic feet, slide them underneath the metal feet, then you will press the side of this down into the pump and then close the lever back. That locks the cassette onto our pump. And the top of our pump, at the very top, once this was latched into place, let me show you that again. Once that's latched into place, it says, it says that their high volume administration set is latched. So you know that it is latched appropriately. The next thing that the pump asks me is, do I want to prime the tubing? And remember, we primed the tubing manually, so we do not need the pump to prime the tubing for us. So anytime it asks you about priming the tubing, you will say no. The pump should ask us about resetting the reservoir volume anytime we're starting a new bag of solution. Our pump is already at the correct volume, so it didn't ask us that. So I'm going to show you how to manually reset that reservoir volume if you need it to. If the pump asks you if you want to reset the reservoir volume, your answer is going to be yes. Right now we're going to say no because it's asking us if we want to start the pump. To reset the reservoir volume, I'm going to press this button right here for tasks. If you notice, highlighted is reset reservoir volume. I'm going to press select. And then the pump asks me, reset reservoir volume to 2000. And I'm going to say yes. And my reset has been accomplished by my pump. So it reset the reservoir volume to 2000. It's very important that every time you start a new bag of TPN, that volume is reset to the original reservoir volume. If that volume is not the original volume, then it won't infuse correctly. So now that we've reset our reservoir volume, we'll press this back button and we're back to the beginning of our screen. So now we need to attach our tubing to our IV line so that we can begin our infusion. We are always going to flush the end of the IV line with one saline flush before we attach the TPN. So you're going to take a saline flush. It has a white cap on it. Take the perforated edge off, pull the saline out. Each one of these saline syringes has a little bit of pressure on it and a little bit air in the top. So I'm going to unscrew this top, lift it off. I need to break the seal. I'm going to do that with my thumb. I'm going to push up on the end of this until I feel a pop, and then pull down and until I see a drip come out the top. Once the drips come out the top, then I know that this flush is ready to use. Even though I don't want to touch the end of this, I can set it on a clean, dry surface because the shape of it will prevent it from being contaminated. So now I'm going to pick up the end of my IV line, take my alcohol pad. I want to clean the ridges and the center of my IV line with the alcohol pad. Clean all around the side and in the center. You need to do that for 10 to 15 seconds, and you want to put some pressure behind it like I'm doing here. It's what we call scrubbing the hub. So for 10 to 15 seconds, I want to clean the end of that. Once I have that clean, I'm going to pick up the end of my IV tubing. It's being protected by this cap, so I'll take this cap off. This tubing will attach the end of my IV line the same way that the syringe attaches to the end of my IV line. Before I attach my tubing, I do want to flush the end of this with the saline. So I'm going to attach my saline inside this IV line. It's spongy, so I'm going to press that in and turn it to the right. Just push and turn to the right. Once I have attached the saline syringe, I want to push this black plunger down to this black line. So I'm going to press that forward until I see this black plunger go all the way down to that black line. So now I'm ready to attach my IV tubing. Again, I made sure that I didn't touch the end of that, and you could wait to take that off until you were ready to attach it. So now I'm going to unscrew the syringe, and I want to attach my IV tubing to my IV line. Again, I'm going to push it in and turn it to the right. You do want to make sure it's snug so that it doesn't leak. Once I have attached that to my IV line, I want to make sure that I unclamp these clamps. You hold the back side of the clamp and push this forward. Just hold right here and push that forward. Sometimes there'll be a crimp in the tubing, so I want to press that crimp, make sure that that's straight so it'll infuse correctly. So now I'm attached to my IV line. My clamp is open on my IV tubing. My clamp is open on my IV line, so I can start my pump. Again, my pump has gone to sleep, so I'm going to press this button. And now, down here at the bottom is our start and stop button. So I'm just going to press that button, and it asks me if I want to start the pump, and I'm going to say yes. It says the infusion is starting now. It changed from being in the stopped mode to running. So right here where it originally had said stopped, now it says running, and the area has gone from red to green. So we know that our TPN is infusing. You notice right now it says it's in taper up. If our TPN is going to infuse over a 12-hour period, it will taper up at a slow rate over the first hour. Then it will go at a steady rate for 10 hours and taper down over the last hour. Now that we have our pump infusing, we can put our medication bag into our TPN bag so that it will be ready to infuse for the night. At the top of our bag, there is a Velcro piece. Just close that down. Then there are Velcro sides that will close over our bag. We want to make sure that the bottom of our tubing does not get crimped. Make sure it's good and straight. Our pump will fit right here. We can close this up and zip the bag. And then your bag is infusing, but yet you can lay this beside you on the bed, and when you need to go to the restroom or move about in your home, you'll be able to take this bag and put it over your shoulder and be able to move about. You don't have to use the IV pole for your TPN. You can put it in your bag and be mobile with your bag. Now, at the end of the 12-hour period, when we get ready to stop our TPN, we're going to open up our bag. I'm going to take our pump out, and we're going to press stop. You look at our pump, it says stop the pump. We're going to say yes, and our pump tells us that it is stopping. If you notice right up here at the top, where it was green, it is now red, and it says that it's stopped. Now, once our pump is stopped, then we want to remove our tubing from our pump so that we can throw the tubing away. In order to remove this, we're going to press this silver lever down. Just push it a little bit further, and this pops right off. Once we've removed it, then we can use the button here on the side. Just press it in and hold it for a second. It says power down. We say yes, and our pump is off. So then our pump is off, and we can save that to use again when we start our infusion back. Now that we have disconnected our TPN bag from our pump, we can disconnect it from the end of our IV line. Anytime that we are going to remove the TPN solution from our IV line, we will need to flush the end of our IV line after the TPN so that our IV line doesn't clog, and we'll need to put a new orange swab cap on it. Because it's the end of our infusion, we will need to wash our hands again and put our gloves on. We're going to disconnect the tubing from our IV line. Take another alcohol pad, clean the end of our IV line all around the sides and in the center. It is likely sticky from the TPN solution, so we want to clean all that off all around the sides and in the center. 10 to 15 seconds. Then we're going to flush it with one saline, one heparin, and put a new orange swab cap on it. So I will open up the saline. The top of this will just lift and come off. Again, I'm going to break the seal by pushing up on the bottom until I feel a pop, and then pulling down until I see the drips come out the top. Attach my saline syringe to my IV line by pressing inward, turning to the right, and then I want to push this plunger down to this black line. So I'm going to press that all the way down. Until it gets to that black line. Once that's finished, now I'm going to flush with my heparinized saline. Anytime I have this syringe attached to the end of my line, it does protect it so I can set it down. I'm going to open up my heparinized saline the same way I did my saline. I'm going to remove this cap, break the seal with my thumb by pushing up. It might be a little bit harder to break the seal on this one, so you're going to push a little bit harder. Then I'm going to push the liquid out the top until I see the drips. Pick up the end of my line, remove the saline syringe. I'm going to take my heparinized saline syringe, attach it the same way by pushing inward, turning to the right. Then I'm going to push that black plunger all the way down to that black line. Hold on to the hub, disconnect that saline. Then I need to put a new orange swab cap on. You're going to open this up, making sure you don't touch the center because there'll be a wet alcohol pad in there. You want to press the end of the hub into the swab cap and then turn it to the right. The packaging will just lift off. The swab cap will remain on the end of your IV line until we start the next TPN solution tomorrow night. If our solution is going continuously, of course, we will change it out at the same time each night. That is how you perform a TPN solution in the home setting.